Okay, Merry Christmas, team. This is your coach, Sir Glenn. So, I hope you're well and you're enjoying your holidays. Anyway, this video is made to have an assessment of your performance in the recently concluded Regional PRISAA held at Holy Angel University. Simulan na natin. I want to look at the game of Andy Villanueva against Holy Angel University. I think it's from round 4, and Andy is handling the white pieces. He started with the moves e4, and his opponent played the French defense, which is e6, d4, d5, knight d2, initiating the French Tarrasch. Okay, so in this position, white can actually play the main line, which is knight c3, but it allows side variations such as like this: bishop b4, e5, and c5. And this variation is called the French Wiener variation. Okay naman tong variation na to. It's considered complicated, and yung fight ng imbalances dito is white's pawn structure against black's white's double pawn against black's um, pressure on the pawn chain, and also having an advantage in pawn structure, no? While white is the space on the king side, which is a typical play naman, no? King side versus queen side attack. Okay. One popular line that I like the most with white is the line after a3, bishop takes, pawn takes, and then knight e7. And after queen g4, queen c7, which is the poison pawn variation. Kaso kingside is also possible here. But instead, queen c7, papakain lang ng black yung dalawang pawn, and then counter-attack with c takes d4. If you notice, yung queen ng black can easily check on c3, winning white's rook. And also, black threatens the pawn on e5. So the accurate move is knight e2. Before, king d1 was also played, but I won't go into details kasi hindi naman yan yung focus natin sa game, no? So after knight e2, d takes c3, hindi pwedeng queen takes e5 dahil after bishop f4 and then pawn takes pawn, white will obtain a very strong position. So instead, we see d takes c3 and then f4, white has to protect the pawn. And after knight b6, queen d3, bishop d7, this is a start of a position na madami ng grandmaster games ang naganap, and it's actually according to taste. Some players, grandmaster, would like this position for black, and some grandmasters would like this position for white. So it's quite balanced. Sabi nga nila, you can take your pick. So after knight c3, also possible is the classical variation, which is the knight f6. And after e5, knight fd7, f4, c5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop e3, we have the French Steinitz variation of the French, no? All goes the same: king side versus queen side pressure, and the player who maneuvers and places his pieces on the correct square usually wins the game, no? Okay, so let's go back to the game. So after knight d2, his opponent played knight f6. Also possible is pawn takes pawn, knight takes knight, and then knight d7, which initiates what we call the French Bern or Rubinstein variation. I'm not sure because most books use the term Bern variation or Rubinstein variation. I think if black plays knight f6 first and then capture on the next move on e4, yun yung Rubinstein. And if the French player captures on e4 as early as the third move, yun yata yung Bern. But anyway, it goes or transposed to the same position naman, kaya walang masyadong difference. So after bishop d3, knight gf7, knight gf6, bishop g5, and bishop e7, queen e2, b6, knight f3, bishop e7, and after capture on f6 and mutual castle, we have the start of the position, where it's the typical queen side versus king side pressure. Okay, so in the game, his opponent played another line, which is the knight f6 line, in answer to the Tarrasch variation, and Andy played e5, knight fd7, and surprisingly, he played knight df3. Well, usually this move is not strange because it's also playable, but before on some games from Grandmaster, especially from Anand, we saw the move f4 first, and after c5, c3, knight c6, only then knight df3. The idea of this move is to keep the pawn chain alive, keeping it supported with f4 and d4. Possible line may happen, such as, let's say for example, um, queen b6, and after a3, or even g3 is possible. Let's say for example g3, then after f6, bishop h3, followed by knight e2, no? Yan yung idea pag masyadong early yung f6, nagkakaroon ng bishop h3 possibility. So instead, black plays this, and after pawn takes pawn, and bishop check, we cannot interpose with our bishop kasi pag hinarang natin may kain dito, no? So instead, white has to play king f2, which is he will lose castling, yes, but in return he can place his king more safely on g2 square, tucked away on the g2 square. Let's say for example, white plays castle, I mean black plays castle, king g2 f6. Then white can keep his pawn center by playing after a3, bishop e7, knight e2. Okay, so let's go back to what Andy played, which is knight df3. Kung titignan mo, parang kakaiba siya, no? Parang error. But actually, after the following moves, um, it goes back to the main line and avoid some of the lines that usually is presented. So after knight e2, bishop d6, mutual castling, we can see that the position has transposed to the normal lines of the French Tarrasch bishop d3 line. To show you my point, let me start from the very beginning. This position may reach by the following moves: e4, e6, d4, d5, knight d2, knight f6, and after e5, knight fd7, bishop d3. The idea is after c5, c3, knight c6, knight e2, and then here in this line usually cd4 is played. f6 is also possible, but a possibility of knight f4 is also quite annoying for black, as he has to give up castling just to protect the pawn by playing king f7, and after queen g6 check, medyo medyo magiging complicated na yung position, especially after king e7, takes, and then takes here, no? Medyo the position is quite unclear. So instead here, usually play this cd4, and after cd4, queen b6, and then knight f3. That's the only time f6 was played. And after capture castle, bishop d6. As you can see, it is quite different from the position na reach ni Andy, no? Although it's quite similar, the pawn structure is quite similar. It's white's d pawn versus black's e6 and d5 pawn. Okay, let's go back. Okay, so in this position, c5 was played, c3, knight c6, bishop d3, f6, takes, knight e2, bishop d6, and then mutual side castles. Okay, here, Andy played quite a different line, which starts from bishop g5, which is also considered solid, because the idea is to play bishop h4 and then bishop g3. But I consider this quite slow kasi nga ang real intention ng white is to neutralize this diagonal, and why not go for it directly like bishop f4, no? The idea is after bishop takes f4, knight f4, let's say for example queen d6, queen d2, white has some pull with regards to having dark square control, no? Let's say for example black tries to break through by playing e5, capture capture, and after queen capture, I think white has a quite an advantage here in terms of actually queen d2, no, not queen d2, but say for example I think possible here is maybe let's say h3, but let's try to go back a bit. Here in this position, yeah, yeah, I think it's better to play g3 first, and after queen c7 only then bishop f4, so that after takes and after takes here, the queen hasn't moved, so it's possible that instead of moving to queen d2 he can play queen e2 at once, so trying to invade by queen e7, no? Possible yon. If rook e8, white can either play queen f3 or even sacrifice the exchange by playing queen takes rook. You can play queen e2 here, or queen takes rook, knight takes rook, rook takes knight, and after king f7 simply rook e2 and then followed by double rooks, or rook e3 maybe. It's a lot of possibilities. Okay, anyway, white can also take it slow by playing first, let's say for example bishop g5 first, and only after queen d2, let's say bishop d7, queen d2, rook a e8, then bishop f4, takes e5. Let's try to take a look, and after queen takes e5, then rook e1, which is also considered quite equal, no? Takes rook e1, so the game will eventually fizzle out into an end game, or middle game na may queen. Okay, all right, so let's try to go back. It's Andy played bishop g5, and after bishop g5, let's look at what his opponent played. Okay, his opponent played takes, and then go for an immediate liquidation in the center with e5. Well, in this position, I think it's quite premature. I guess black should have played queen c7 first, and after bishop g3, bishop d7, rook ac1, rook a e8, and then next move will be e5. I think it's more proper if black wants to gain an advantage in the position. Actually, after rook a e8, bishop g3, and bishop takes, knight takes, queen d6, I think slight pa nga ang black dito, no? Slight pa siya ng konti. Konti lang naman, not by much. Well, as you can see, black threatens to capture on b2, but not on d4. But for example, rook a1 and black captures here, he will lose the queen after bishop takes h7, so it's not possible. And after queen takes here, rook b1 takes, and takes here, bishop c8. Well, I guess I don't consider it as an advantage for him, but Instead, the idea of queen b6 is really to eliminate the bishop d3. The main idea being, let's say for example, later on, black will play knight b4, and after bishop b1, well, possible maybe is to swing the bishop here on b5. Well, I was just thinking like that. Or maybe it's even better for black to transfer the bishop here on h5 later. So I don't know. I'm not really a French player, so I wouldn't know the strategic plans here. But in this position, I guess white has the better light square bishop kasi nga bad bishop yung black na successful yung white na ma-exchange yung dark square bishop. Plus, both of white's rooks are developed quite perfectly. So here after bishop g5, black plays e5 after a pawn exchange, and then resulted in this kind of middle game. Okay, here as you can see, black threatens the classic sacrifice bishop takes pawn, and after king takes pawn, knight g4 check. Let's say for example, white just play queen c2 halimbawa lang, no? Well, black will be successful in eliminating the bishop by playing this combination, little combination, short combination. So Andy of course knows that and played that tricky knight c3, no? Ano ba yung idea ng knight c3? Well, ang idea ng knight c3 hindi nagagana yung sacrifice because after bishop takes, king takes, and knight g4, instead of king move, which falls into queen takes bishop, white plays the surprising queen takes knight, which after bishop takes queen, rook takes bishop, white emerges one piece up. No, yan yung trap ni Andy, no? So of course his opponent knows it and didn't do the sacrifice, but instead after knight c3 played queen d6. So h3 was played. Black tried to develop. Sorry, black tried to um, develop, and then Andy played h3. But after bishop d7, Andy exchanged on f6, which is quite surprising, no? The idea is just to win a pawn on d5 because of a particular trick. Okay, I think this is good enough, but after bishop takes f6, bishop takes f6, well, bishop c4 is considered strong, no? In the game, his opponent played rook takes f6, and after knight takes d5, rook h6, it looks like black has some form of compensation kasi may konting initiative siya. But here, Andy played queen b3. Well, I guess this is quite medyo hindi ito yung considered strongest because of the possibility of the bishop pin. So I consider knight e3 to be more stronger, no? Kasi after, let's say for example, bishop takes b2, hindi siya possible because of queen d3, no? And also after, let's say, bishop e6 naman, white can threaten knight c4 anytime, no? Knight c4 takes, king h8, and after takes and rook ad1, white is a healthy pawn up even though it's opposite color, dahil may presence pa ng double rooks and possible kumuha pa ng isa pang rook sa 7th rank after occupation. I'll give the advantage to white. Anyway, after knight takes d5, I mean Rook h6, queen b3. Surprisingly, black played rook, king h8. He played king h8. Now the question is, what happens if black plays bishop e6? Of course, white has to defend it with bishop c4. Bakit bishop c4? Bakit hindi bishop e4? Ano mangyayari pag bishop e4? Well, it first of all, it doesn't break the pin, and black will just simply uh, pressure the knight on d5, and eventually may hirapan yung white na maalis sa pin yung knight, no? So I guess bishop c4 is better. And let's say, for example, black plays b5, queen takes b5, and then king h8, or maybe rook b8. It's more direct. Queen a4, king h8, and then rook fd1. Well, I guess yung advantage ng white hindi na siya ganun ka-clear, no? Ako, I consider this since the rook can capture in b2 anytime. No, although not now kasi may background problem siya. Maybe after check here, and then rook takes b2. Check, bishop g8, and then knight f4. Ouch, mukhang masakit-sakit yan. I think white is already winning here. So I guess poisoned yung pawn sa b2, no? Poison siya, no? How about after check, rook f8? Huwag tayong kumain. Well, mahirap talaga, no? Kasi yung pinasok na linya ng black, pawn down siya without clear compensation. So I guess it would be really to white's favor or advantage. Anyway, after king h8, Andy played the surprising bishop e4. Okay, and after rook f8, rook ae1, bishop e6, medyo napunta sa position na the moves here are not quite important kasi here Andy just tried to keep his material advantage, and here the amazing shot, queen c7. Kung mapapansin mo, the queen cannot be taken if black takes the queen, and then rook f8 mates him, no? And also if white tries to, teka, yung bishop na to nasa d4 to, alam ko eh. Ayan, bishop f6, rook c1 is possible. Kung titignan mo, parang error yan, Sir Glenn, kasi after queen takes queen, rook takes queen, check, after angat ng king may check dito, bawi. No, actually no, kasi after harang may pag kinain to, mati na naman sa f8, at pag kinain naman to ng rook, yung isa naman nang check dito. So amazingly, both of the rooks are en pre or en price, yung f8 at saka yung c7. But I guess in this particular complication, white remains on top because of his extra pawn. I showed this variation to Andy already, diba? Sabi ko siya, queen c7 is possible, but instead Andy tried to play queen c4 again, and I guess the game was eventually won kasi nga Andy was a better blitz player. But if black was successful in generating some initiative at medyo napunta sa defensive position si Andy, baka it goes the other way around. But anyway, this is one of the good job that Andy did in the PRISAA. Congratulations, Andy. Next video, I will present another game. So please watch the second part of this video. Again, this is Coach Glenn signing off.